In this lesson, we are going to be speaking about perfect tenses in English, but we will address this issue from a different perspective. The objective of this lesson will be to look at this grammar phenomenon from the point of view of what is in the mind of an English speaker when they are using words and word combinations to express specific meanings. For the time being, I call on you to leave behind the old good traditional approach with rules and exceptions, and I hope it could make much more sense to you in the long run. Look at the slide and try to express the idea of to know with the help of the verb to learn. Well, after thinking for a while, you will definitely come to the conclusion that it is to have learned. Examples are many. To be friends practically means the same as to have made friends. What does it show? It shows settled language routines or habits specific to English. English speakers are used to expressing the seemingly similar idea in different word combinations. Just because they see reality this way, it is important to underline for them that we can not only know something, but we can have it after learning. Interestingly, if we take the verb have, we will see how widespread and universally practiced this language routine has grown. Even dictionaries and textbooks level up the meanings of these two forms. We may only assume why the habit of I've got instead of I have has gained such popularity. Probably it shows the speaker's business-like nature. Indeed, if we analyze this pair of contrasted sentences, we will effortlessly arrive at the correct and adequate conclusion as to how to interpret them. I got a letter, meaning I received a letter yesterday, then, for example. I have got a letter means I have this letter. The letter is here with me. Now, why do we make it a slippery slope for ourselves when it comes to other verbs? For example, discover. Why do we misguide ourselves into interpreting I have discovered as a past action, thus failing to tell it apart from I discovered, another past action? What mysterious past-present connective exists to help us identify the verb forms? So I want you to understand that now we're dealing with two different tenses, with two times, so to speak. So how do you go about interpreting the sentences? In the first, it is clear that I discovered means a discovery happened to me then, in the past. Now it is not present. He is very sensitive. I have discovered, that means I have something after discovery. This discovery is completed. What can I have after a complete discovery? Perhaps knowledge. So we can interpret the sentences like I know it. Now we can understand that present perfect is all about having now what is left after an action. Roughly speaking, having a completed action. It doesn't mean an action as such, because when you have something, it is more of a state rather than an action. Secondly, which is more important, it doesn't mean an action, or it doesn't mean something that happened in the past, as is normal in many textbooks or grammar manuals. Because I have discovered means I know it now, I have this knowledge now. No past is described, no past is felt. I would like you to look at my attempts to figure out what it can be the case in Russian. Perhaps it is some kind of the meaning of perfect, which we use in our language, in the Russian language, because technically the verb forms are expressed in the past, are expressed in their past forms, but they describe the present. I typify situations of speech where we can express what we have. In abstract sense, of course. First, it is experience. Very often we refer to our experience, which is present, which we have. For example, we have met before, meaning we are friends. We know each other. Have you ever been to a typical situation when you ask somebody about their experience. Do you have any experience of visiting London? Have you ever been to London? I have worked as a teacher in the past, even though a reference to the past is made, we still here use present tense because we're speaking about our experience, which we have, meaning which is relevant to us, for example, when applying for a position, for a job, and describing to our prospective employer what we have, what skills we have after working somewhere and even at some time. We can have a completed event, meaning that the event is practically over, but we have it still because we are at the final point of it. For example, it has been a hot day, means that I give you a summary of the day, which has already been, which has already taken place, which has already happened. It has been a pleasure to meet you. I sum up the experience of meeting you, saying that it not was, because I now see you and I am describing to you my experience, but it has been a pleasure to meet you. We can have a completed state. Oh, what does it mean? It means that we sometimes want to underline that the state of affairs which we have now is characterized by a completion, by a some kind of time characteristics. For example, I have lived in Moscow for 2 years, meaning I have 2 years of life, or I have 2 years of living in Moscow. I would like to illustrate the orientating meaning behind the usage of present perfect forms now. In the Olympic Games of 2002, a Canadian pair of skaters, after a brilliant free routine, were sure they would get the score high enough to take first place. However, the score didn't live up to everyone's expectations, and they were shocked to see that the judges ranked them second. The sports commentator couldn't believe his eyes and exclaimed, "They won!" Why did he use past tense in this case? Just because we don't see winners in the picture. Look, they are not winners. We don't have them up to winning. We don't have winners in the pictures. That's why it is past. It is not felt. It is not seen in the present. A few days later, following a high-profile scandal, the Canadians were awarded the gold medals, and in this case, we can say they have won, looking at them winning these medals. You use the phrase, use the question, have you seen him, when you want to ask a person if they have a completed action of seeing somebody, like, for example, John. What is your intention? You want to ask if the person knows where John is. For example, when you are looking for John, you say the same in the past tense. Did you see him? Did you see John? When you want to ask if this seeing John took place or didn't take place in the past, if it happened or didn't happen. For example, if you are watching a video and noticed John appear on the video in one of the episodes, and you are asking your friend, did you see him? Meaning if the friend saw or didn't see John on that video in that episode, meaning that it is past now, it is not present. Look at the sentences which you see. I'm sure that traditional grammar will not work so well in that case to explain to us very colorfully the usage of the past perfect. Of course, we can resort to different descriptions like the result, the accomplishment, and so on, but I think, in my judgment, it will not look natural. We can here do without these descriptions, and it will be much easier to understand a sentence with the help of the verb have, because have means have. He started to read, and an hour later he had read 20 pages. We mean he had 20 pages after reading. There were 20 pages in his mind after reading them. It comes easy when we understand that the verb have doesn't lose its meaning, doesn't drop any of its meanings either. 20 minutes passed, but he hadn't come. Why hadn't come? Because we want to see that 20 minutes passed, but he wasn't there. We didn't have him after coming. We didn't have him around. There was no rain and the sun was shining. Express the same idea, but with the help of the verb stop. I'm sure it will be easy for you to do it. It had stopped raining and the sun was shining. The structure, the pattern looks familiar to you, doesn't it? But no, these sentences are practically the same in meaning. The same goes for the sentence, I wasn't still in the room when the telephone rang. If we use the verb enter here, we would express it like I had not, or I had hardly entered the room when the telephone rang. Practically the same meaning. Only slight shades of meanings are expressed here, because in the first example, I wasn't in the room, just my state is expressed, while in the second sentence, I want to convey more information. I wasn't in the room as a result of entering. Well, the summary of what I have been saying could look like this. Point number one, every word is meaningful, meaning that have does not lose its meaning. Please use the meaning of word have to interpret the constructions of I have done, traditionally known as present perfect, or had done as past perfect. Grammar form is not a tense as such. It is a language routine, a settled practice of combining words to express a specific meaning. Perfect tenses are all about having a completed action or state when there is, or you have something as a result of something accomplished. You should interpret perfects with the help of the verb have. I already have, I already had, I will already have something. As a kind of home task, I would like you to think over the examples which you see in the picture and try to figure out which alternative you would rather choose to describe the situation which is expressed in them. Of course, the context is very narrow, but still, I think that it will be enough for you to decide upon the variant. We will discuss these answers in the second lesson, in lesson number 2, which will be devoted to present simple versus present progressive verb forms. Besides, I would like you to express your criticism and to ask your questions and send them at the address you see at the top of the slide. Thank you for listening.